Okay, guys, so Sibyl. Okay, let's talk about something first. So if you're a Chinese person and you have an understanding that household rules will affect your character, and that these rules actually have a sense, there's a reason why family values exist and why morality exists and how it interconnects with religion. You understand that discipline is important if you want to succeed as a person, and that there are obvious side effects of those who are just carefree and do whatever they want. I was going I was going to talk about an example of like one of my friends in church who wanted to become a vegetarian, and the parents said no because they're Chinese people, right? Chinese people eat meat. I mean, there's nothing wrong in the fact that you don't want to eat meat, other than like the fact that you won't get enough protein if you don't carefully manage your diet. But is it a matter of rebellion, or there are implications to the action, and that's why that's why there's a concern there. So remember to always consider your actions, consider the divine law, and consider what your parents want is the best. Okay, well, maybe sometimes it's not the best, but we're starting with Sibyl, and Sibyl is probably the second best poem aside from Digging. If you understand it, again, you have to understand the theme. This and my analysis on this one is really good. Okay, I'm going to read everything from the page that I've written, and I'm going to get 20 out of 20 because my points are so insightful. I'm going to speak super fast, but not sound like I'm reading. 3, 2, 1. Start the 8-minute timer right now. So, Sibyl is the second part of the triptych, a collection of 3 poems written by Seamus Heaney. A triptych is a type of painting in which the middle panel is the largest, flanked by the other 2 on both sides. Heaney utilizes this structure of having the second part of the triptych be the most important by writing Sibyl with a theme applying to all of humanity, the entire scope of humanity at its current stage, that there's an imminent regression of society. There is a way out, though. This is my first argument. The purpose of the seer being asked by the persona is the perspective of the archaic past and ignorance of present-day people. And the first indicator of this is the tongue of the persona moving like a swung, relaxing hinge. This metaphor, this description, as mechanical, it already implies to alter the mood of the poem, that the tongue moving is already there's something unnatural about humanity at its current stage. So then he asks her a question, and this question form, what will become of us, indicates that people are ignorant and that they lack self-awareness. That's why they have to ask the seer. And as forgotten water in a well might shake, and an explosion under morning, this large analogy that takes up 2 lines, continuing to the next stanza, or a crack run up a gable. The first analogy, including a simile as forgotten water, means the past is forgotten, simply. While the second analogy, the crack running up a gable, is referring to the foundation of a building being torn apart. or beginning to be destroyed. This enjambment in the line splits the two analogies because they have different meanings, but they both pertain to the destruction of humanity. And this is what the seer talks about. The seer has an understanding of the situation as a whole. She says, I think our very form is bound to change, which means that they're going to regress. Dogs in the siege, saurian relapses, pismires. Saurians are basically half lizards, half humans, which suggests that the fact that they're relapsing it's cyclical, that they'll return to this bad habit. Pismires are bugs. Dogs in the siege, imagining dogs riled up, aggressive, attacking and not thinking, especially when in a siege, trapping someone. This idea contributes to the fact that the seer saying that there is a regression of humanity in this case. And unlike for the two lines in the beginning of the third stanza are this slight change of tone, because they talk about how instead of being negative, instead of being foreboding doom, prognosticating destruction, they instead mention this idea of forgiveness, finding nerve and voice. But who is forgiving who? But then the next line indicates that humanity is like a bleeding tree. Humanity is like a tree. They're connected to nature, interconnected with nature. And they need to both repent and then forgive themselves in order to be their best. And it juxtaposes the ideas of the buds with the magma incubating, how the magma incubating is actually turning into the buds, growing into the buds. And this imagery is effective in the idea that there is a change over time, improvement as we grow. And this leads me to my second argument, which is that the switch in the fourth stanza from present imagery, from the allusion to the Greek mythology to the modern day present imagery, this idea and especially this accentuates the idea of superfluous, these secular desires, and greed specifically as the problems that they need to fix. And this is masterfully identified in the first line of the fourth stanza when they mention bright nymphs. The Sibyl, the seer, is still thinking in the past, which gives insight. But then also she uses the nymphs as an example, and considering the idea of the nymphs as very carefree and focusing on pleasure. And this is exactly what the people today are. They are greedy. They're thinking of money. They talk weather, which means that their words mean nothing. They're meaningless. And the reason why the oil rigs lull their future on single acquisitive stems means that they, instead of thinking about the whole, and instead of thinking about the common good, they are instead looking at immediate gratification, which of course contributes to greed once again, and the idea that there is no community and connective tissue in between all of humanity, to use that metaphor. And there is a double oxymoron in the last sentence of the fourth stanza, because it's sagacious. It's quite a sagacious technique, because having the echo sounders, which are machined in the trawlers, which reflects bounce hit when they hit the echo sounders hits ground or an object, it will send back the echo so that the machine can hear it. But they can't hear anything. Silence has shoaled into it because it's infinite. The abyss is infinite. This is almost a paradox. However, shoaled means shallow. So if it's infinite and shallow at the same time, that doesn't make any sense. However, considering the fact that this is also in its literal sense, the fact that eventually if they keep going, if humanity keeps following this path, they will be so confused that they will gain nothing out of their trawlers, out of their this commercial greedy mindset. And in the final stanza, it solidifies this point with this allusion to the Tempest by Shakespeare. And in the Tempest, it's in the specific scene in which this quote, the last quote of the last line comes from, Act 3, Scene 2. The main characters wander the island and they plot to kill someone in order to steal his things. However, in the line itself, we can deduce that it is ultimately meaningless and superficial, and that all the enjoyments that the characters take from the island is not going to help save them in the end from destruction. Do you guys think I talked enough about literary devices? Because I talked about every single thing that I wrote down on this poem that I wrote down on this sheet. If you guys, I think I'll just scan the poem and put it on top of the audio when I post it on YouTube. But that was intense, man. That was fun. This is my second last poem, and I think I'm just a bit too lazy and tired to do At the Water's Edge. And one of my friends has asked me to do Strange Fruit, so even though I'm not doing that poem, I'm doing Strange Fruit next. And guys, really consider what all the lessons that this poem has. I don't know. You can always find a way to draw meaning out of something, and draw connections between things. That's how you become intuitive in life.